Daniel Ricciardo's return to the Formula One grid was a shock for everyone. His last year at McLaren had been so bad that his insistence that he wanted to come back into a top team made it seem impossible for him to return to the sport. His crash during practice at the Dutch Grand Prix means his surprise return was brought to a shuddering halt. Today we'll talk about how long Ricciardo is going to be out, and how his replacement could end any chance he has of getting the seat at Red Bull that he wants so badly. Nick de Vries's underwhelming start in Formula One meant that after just 10 races, Red Bull thought they'd be better off with someone else. Daniel Ricciardo was the lucky man to replace him, returning to Formula One after a half-season break that apparently relit his competitive fire. The Honey Badger came back with a newfound determination to succeed, after years of poor career decisions and declining form. It's too soon to say if that determination is actually going to be converted into results on track or not though. Unfortunately for Daniel, his crash at the Dutch Grand Prix means we're going to have to wait even longer to find out if he has his mojo back. AlphaTauri's Ricciardo, in just his third Grand Prix since earning a drive with the Red Bull-backed outfit, fractured his left hand when he drove into a tyre wall at Zandvoort on Friday in an attempt to avoid running headlong into Piastri's stricken McLaren after the rookie had crashed just moments earlier. The incident left Piastri reflecting that Ricciardo's actions may have prevented an even more serious incident. "If you're coming into that corner, it's blind, so maybe he saw me too late and turned to the wall instead of into me. So if he did, thank you," said the Melbourne rookie. The two Aussies were thankfully able to clamber out of their cars after their accidents, but the 34-year-old Ricciardo had difficulty extricating himself because his hand had still been on the steering wheel as he hit the wall. He had to be treated in hospital before his team reported. An X-ray confirmed he sustained a break to a metacarpal on his left hand, and this injury will not allow him to continue his duties, so he will be replaced by the team's reserve driver Liam Lawson for the remainder of the weekend. We'll get back to Liam Lawson shortly, but let's talk about this break to Ricciardo's hand a little more first. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner said Ricciardo had an operation on Sunday to insert screws into the bone. "It was fairly straightforward procedure," Horner said. "Now it's all about recovery. For a normal human being, that would be a couple of months. For a Grand Prix driver, it's usually much shorter. We need to see how the recovery goes, but certainly not Italy." The injury was reminiscent of the one that Lance Stroll suffered before the season began. 5 days before pre-season testing, scans showed I had a fracture and displacement in my right wrist, a fracture in my left wrist, a partial fracture in my left hand, and finally another fracture in the big toe on my right foot. Lance's recovery was expected to take weeks as well. His doctors thought he would miss at least 2 races, but despite not being able to turn his steering wheel properly at the season opener, he still managed to race and finish 16 seconds behind his teammate. Fernando Alonso drove in pre-season practice just a month after breaking his jaw in 2021 as well. So there is precedent that Daniel could be back quickly, but the team aren't expecting any miracles this time. "Unfortunately, the break is complicated," said Red Bull consultant Helmut Marko to Sky Germany. "It's not a straight break." On Monday afternoon, AlphaTauri confirmed the expected news that Lawson would continue at Monza and future races until Ricciardo is fit to resume racing. Liam Lawson was the 4th driver that AlphaTauri have used this season, which is the maximum allowed in Formula One. He's currently battling for the Super Formula Championship, and luckily his commitments there won't clash with races Red Bull will need him for. If he couldn't drive, then Nick de Vries would have had to make a return to the grid for a few races. When Nick was on his way out of the AlphaTauri team, Lawson was the favourite to replace him. The 21-year-old took part in 3 F1 practice sessions last season, 2 for AlphaTauri and 1 for Red Bull, and he's definitely the cream of the crop in their junior program at the moment. The 21-year-old racing driver from Pukekohe, New Zealand, serves as the reserve driver for both Red Bull and AlphaTauri Formula One teams, and has done so since the middle of the 2022 season. Prior to driving in Super Formula, Lawson raced in Formula 2 from 2021 to 2022, first with High-Tech Grand Prix before moving to Rodin Carlin for his second season. He finished 9th in his rookie season, with 1 win, 3 podiums and 1 pole position, taking his sole victory on debut in the Bahrain sprint race. In his second F2 season, he finished 3rd in the standings behind champion Felipe Drugovich and runner-up Theo Pourchaire, winning 4 races and scoring 10 podiums. In 2021, Lawson also contested in the DTM and narrowly missed out on the title, driving for Red Bull AF Course in a hotly contested campaign alongside teammate and current Williams F1 driver Alex Albon. He finished 2nd after becoming an innocent victim of an opening lap collision triggered by his championship rival Kelvin van der Linde in the final race at the Norris Ring. He is an experienced driver who has had success in every series he's raced in and won a couple of championships in New Zealand's open-wheel racing series. That experience clearly shone through at Zandvoort. He finished 13th on his debut ahead of AlphaTauri teammate Yuki Tsunoda after a dramatic final 10 laps in the wet. Plenty of people were quick to notice that Yuki has finished behind both of the AlphaTauri mid-season replacements in their first race, but there probably isn't much insight to gain out of that. Liam's performance was particularly impressive though. He hasn't driven this season's AlphaTauri at all, and only having one practice session before qualifying to adapt to the car is a big ask. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner was quick to point out just how well Liam had done, considering the awful conditions at Zandvoort over the weekend. The poor guy getting dropped in a car he's never driven, wet, dry conditions. Everything was thrown at him. I actually think he did pretty well, said Horner. He actually overtook Max on Max's outlap as he changed onto the intermediate tyres at the end. To finish a race like that in itself with the lack of experience and very difficult circumstances, he applied himself very well. Lawson's 13th place finish will make plenty of people sit up and pay attention, considering just how tough a race the Dutch GP was. There will be plenty of eyes on him in Monza. Remember Nick de Vries's incredible drive there last season when he finished 9th and earned himself a place at AlphaTauri for this season? Who's to say that couldn't happen to Liam as well? Helmut Marko has said he will spend the week in the simulator getting adjusted to the AT04 and the track at Monza. There are lessons to be learned from Nick de Vries's promotion to a full-time drive. One great race doesn't make a great racer. AlphaTauri will be very keen to not make that same mistake again, but they will have a few races at least to assess Liam. Ricciardo is definitely out for Monza, and reports are saying he won't be back for Singapore either on the 17th of September. That means Liam could have 3 races to impress the AlphaTauri team. The AT04 isn't a good car, so no one will be expecting anything like a points finish from him. But if over 3 races he can stay in touch with Yuki Tsunoda, then that will be a great sign he has the ability to compete in F1. For Daniel, this is awful news. Ricciardo has been keen to get back into the Red Bull team. Though he hasn't said it in such a blunt way, he wants to replace Sergio Perez next year. If that's not possible, he wants the seat in 2024 when Checo's contract ends. But if Liam Lawson comes in and performs better compared to Yuki Tsunoda than Daniel has, how can Red Bull give him that seat? According to respected F1 journalist Michael Laminato, Ricciardo was only convinced to abandon his plan for a full year off in favour of a mid-year AlphaTauri induction, because the team would otherwise have subbed in Lawson. That could have locked the Aussie out of the driver market for good. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed for Liam yet. He still has to turn up to the track and put in a performance. If he does though, this broken hand could be the end of Daniel Ricciardo's career as a Formula 1 driver. As brutal as that sounds, Daniel hasn't looked like he would get the better of Yuki Tsunoda over a whole season yet. He's not come back and put in the performances that Red Bull hoped for, the ones he used to pull off when he drove for the team all those years ago. I know he's only had 2 races, and these things take time, but unless he has an outstanding end to the season, Liam Lawson might be the straw that broke the Australian's career. What did you think of Liam Lawson's debut for AlphaTauri? Do you think Daniel Ricciardo's career could be ended by this broken hand? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.